He's been in communication with the higher ups at Delta. I've got names, I've got numbers, so we're good. We may have a train ride, right? That's great. Okay, so yeah.
That's even better in Europe.
Kids are on my ticket, yeah, right?
I think we check in together. You're saying which flight was canceled?
The ones in Paris, however that is. So
these experiences are going to continue to inform our lives.
Carrier, a train, something like that. So we'll get to Berlin.
Yes.
No bag. Discomforted, you were tired. There was no complaining. Mara's luggage is somewhere in Asia, maybe.
Invited to proceed to Aéroport de Paris information desk at the arrival level terminal 2.
We're closer to Berlin than we were yesterday.
We've been here for a really long time.
We were all tired, we were exhausted, we were miserable. Honestly, like we bonded over it, we were laughing, we were dancing. It turned out to be fine.
We found an angel of a woman at a Paris office who told us she really couldn't help us. We started to walk away and she said, "Oh, excuse me, miss, come back." And then figured out a way to get us all here on a train. So it was like unreal.
Hallelujah.
And we are standing at the border between East Berlin and West Berlin in the no man's land. Remember?
On that point too, just the fact that, like we said before, it is just in the middle of everything, in the middle of the city, and there's no sort of anything to either keep the sights of just main Berlin out, or like the sounds, like walking through, you hear cars, you hear people talking, you hear music from the restaurant or whatever. And that it's sort of like it's just here in the middle, and that all the sounds of the city of everyday life are like a part of the memorial, that life is still here.
Climb up the taller stela and just running around, like having a good time riding their bikes through the hills. And it first struck me as just like very disrespectful, but then I was saying that maybe that's the point, that life goes on around even things like this.
Exactly.
I wasn't sure that that's like the right time and place for it, but I can see that point.
Yeah.
We're in the heart here. I mean, you could do a lot. Look at the space. Look how much space there is here. Look how expensive this space is. Look how central it is, how important it is. So just from a purely financial, economic perspective, this doesn't make sense.
New Germany is not like the old Germany. And for that, it was very important to build this Jewish museum. It was the first time that Germany tried to show the whole German Jewish history, what was not possible before. And that is what is the Jewish Museum Berlin. Yes, when we started, so we started together with a group of 10 historians and people to prepare this permanent exhibition. And we had big discussions, not only inside, but in the whole society. The architecture itself is our most important showcase. It is our most important object.
Experienced was an interesting mixed media piece of music almost. It was an aleatoric piece in which when we stepped on the faces of the piece of the space, not only did our feet change the pitches and whatnot, but the piece of music is performed differently every time, depending on how many people are in the space, how many people are walking, how fast they're walking, what they weigh, and how they disturb the different faces and the different pieces of metal, because different pieces of metal will ring at different pitches depending on which face is touching which face, and the size and the weight and the constitution of the materials that are touching each other. So it's a chance piece of music, and that's what I really liked about it, and I thought it was a very interesting statement about also just the uncertainty and chance of life.
Open to the sky, open to the weather, open to judgments. It is also open to the view of nearby neighbors, just as it was in 1941. Houses still sit close to the station. Berliners looked out of their windows and saw what was happening here. Perhaps some of the Jews saw them standing at their windows, saw curtains being drawn and backs turned.
Though the Tree of Life may have seemed dead in Germany in 1945, these trees are working to make Track 17 disappear and to leave in its place a corridor of life.
How you teach the Holocaust or think about memory and memorial looking at memorials, for example. Well, I've spent some time thinking about it. I've just designed a new course, but everything is going to shift now because of what's happened over this last 10 days. Again, the kinds of questions and the kinds of links that can be made from the historical, social, and political context into the aesthetic is something that has happened because we looked at a lot of memorials in Berlin, a lot of memorials. I was delighted with how many we had seen. And I have to tell you that it was incredible to see things I have spent so much time thinking about and studying in books, but this informal learning of this program that takes us to the site, that allows us to engage with those memorials in visceral ways, to be present at the site, it's extraordinary, and it has changed how I think about the memorials, the ones that I knew and the ones that I didn't know and are now new to my repertoire, which I will now include in my work.
Especially powerful was the trip to Terezin because there were so many musicians that were there at Terezin, and I got the opportunity to play my flute there at a memorial service at Terezin, and I chose to play something written by Gideon Klein, or a portion of a string trio written by Gideon Klein.
Six million men and women, boys and girls, young men and women, infants and the elderly, who were cruelly slain and butchered and mass murdered in their dwelling places and cities and in the forests and villages.
For 7 weeks I've lived in here, penned up inside this ghetto, but I have found my people here. The dandelions call to me and the white chestnut candles in the court, only I never saw another butterfly. He described the one and only butterfly he did see there, so richly, brightly, dazzlingly yellow. It flew away, he said, up and up, away from Earth, leaving the cold gray world of Terezin behind. He fixed his attention on that butterfly.
The sun has made a veil of gold, so lovely that my body aches. Above the heavens shriek with blue, convinced I've smiled by some mistake. The world's abloom and seems to smile. I want to fly, but where, how high? If in barbed wires things can bloom, why can't I? I will not die.
I say, you are my refuge. All I have in the land of the living. Free me from prison that I may praise your name.
Ghetto or concentration camp, but in Terezin, on alien soil, people sing the Lord's song and humanity's song. They wrote poems and put on plays and painted pictures. They performed the Verdi Requiem 13 times. They defied their Nazi tormentors by creating transcendent beauty in the midst of ugliness. They were hungry, ragged, and terrorized. They were never freed from their prison, but even the children wrote poems and drew pictures. Through their art, the voices of these people survive. By our reading their words today and lighting candles in their memory, we affirm their lives, precious to God, precious to us, through their expressions of courage, hope, and the will to live.
So first, welcome to Terezin. Let me introduce myself to you. My name is Dagmar Liblova, and I was asked to come here and to spend the day with you here, not because I would be a professional guide, but I am one of the few people who are survivors of Terezin and who are still able to speak with people, because you know, we are getting more and more old, and some of us who were able to do it several years ago are now too old or too weak or too ill or too sick to do. So now you have come to Terezin. Terezin, you have heard about it, I hope, on the way here, what it was. And so I don't speak about that. Maybe so that you know what my way through Terezin was. I came here in June 1942, and I was 13. I came here with my parents and with my younger sister and with our grandmother. And the grandmother was then sent away in autumn 42, and we were lucky to stay here 1.5 years in Terezin, to December 1943. In December 1943, we were sent to Auschwitz, to so-called family camp. So I was lucky to escape the gas chambers of Auschwitz, but my parents and my younger sister were not. There were about 15,000 children who arrived here, but only from those who were then sent away to other places, only, it's again not quite clear, but about 300 or 400 survived. And I am one of those because, as I told you, I came here when I was 13. It was not allowed to leave the barracks because there were still remnants of the former citizens living here, and so we could stay only in the buildings inside the buildings. So we could, for instance, when we arrived here, so my grandmother, my mother, my sister and I came to one barracks and the father to other one, and we couldn't see each other. Education of Jewish children was forbidden. It was forbidden, but of course we learned something. And what was not forbidden was the drawing. And so the children draw pictures. The problem was that there were not enough material, there were not enough paper, not enough pencils, not colors and so on. That in all these houses, which you can see on our way, all was packed with people. Everything was full of people, because in this small space, almost 6,000 people had to live. And it's really, nowadays, especially by a nice day like this one, it's very difficult to imagine that there was nothing, not a corner where you could be alone. Everything was full of people, always. There you see one of the barracks with a small tower. There were people living there. This part of the square was also forbidden because the building at the corner with the grey building with the tower, that was the commander's office. And of course it was for Jews, it was not possible to enter the vicinity of the commander's place. I lived in this building. That was a so-called home for girls. There were about more than 300 girls living there. In each room there were girls of the same age. So I lived in a room which was 4th and 5th window from the right. That was a place where we lived. It was about 4 times 5 or 4 times 4.5 meters, and we were 24 girls living there.
I'm much more aware now of, first of all, how intertwined we all are. Jews, Catholics, Christians, no matter what distinction we want to make, we all have a responsibility to both learn from the past and to apply those lessons to make sure that future generations understand how easy it was for this to happen, for the Holocaust to happen.
the idea of not teaching in isolation, the idea of cross-curricular, bringing all the as many threads together as possible. We had history blended with art, blended with literature, blended with music, and that gave such a rich experience that's what I'm going to strive to create when I go back.
You look at the Olympic Stadium, it was built to showcase the triumph of the Aryan race. And a few weeks ago, the German Cup final was played there, and the team that won, which came from Munich, the city where the Nazi Party was founded, they had a team filled with Muslims and blacks and Latin Americans and Slavs. You look at the building that used to be the Reich Ministry of Aviation, where they planned horrible bombing raids on cities in Britain and Eastern Europe, and now that's the Federal Ministry of Finance, which distributes money that helps bail out those same countries and to build a really great nation. And I think that no matter how bad things can get, a nation can always change, and Berlin has shown that. And when we went to a synagogue in Berlin and prayed there, it was really special because it feels like the nation of Germany has done a 180, and it's really wonderful to see that happen.
And we're talking about teachers and students and everyone coming all together. And one of the things that happens as a teacher is you give out all year, and it's hard to bring it back in. But turning me into a student here is what's filling me back up, and the questions and learning things, and it's really transformative.
Going through the touching memorials in the museum, I really did feel a response, and I think that that was made even more apparent by sharing these experiences with such a phenomenal group of people.
And then the morning where we had the Orthodox rabbi followed by the leftist politician, I love that.
It sort of puts things in perspective. Like, we may think we know what's good for the world. We may think we know for sure that we are right, that we are everything that is right, but we have to know to check ourselves, and we have to learn that sometimes an ideal is not worth it.
To be able to come here and experience the things that we've all been able to experience, and to meet so many new people, and to just practice genuinely that idea of being a lifelong learner. And we're constantly being advocates of that philosophy of you have to continue to learn no matter if you're in school, you're out of school, or what age you may be. And right now we're all doing just that.
And what affected me more than anything else were these little memorials, the stumble stones, the signs that we saw at the park yesterday. Those things had more impact than I think the big memorials. Yeah, we walked past the three mirrors in the garment district. If I'd been on a tour of Berlin, I would have walked past it 100 times. It would have meant nothing. And I think this is why this trip was so great. The idea of places is very important. I think as a historian, for students, you can and teachers, you can read about something in a book, you can see a painting from the Renaissance, but when you're standing there, at the topography of terror, at the Berlin Wall and Checkpoint Charlie, it's, you can kind of let your mind realize those events happened right there, and it gives you a different perspective. And I think that's important, to see where the events happened.
It's important to get a whole range of views. Okay, it helps us define and sharpen our own views. Okay, and it also opens us up to other views, which I think is maybe the most important.
One of the things that I've gotten back from this trip is not only inspiration for what I do, but inspiration for the art and craft of teaching writ large. My course is going to be revived next year because of what I've learned and seen in these places. My desire to connect to people about these topics and the power that can be derived from that connection has been reinforced and is stronger than it was clearly before I went into the trip. So on both a personal and academic level, I feel very lucky, very enriched, and I'm fired up, ready to go.
There are so many people who have never been heard, who simply disappeared, and we have a responsibility to bring their voices back and to make sure they're not forgotten. And from a Catholic perspective, I think we have a deep responsibility to our faith to do that, to really act and not just talk about the idea of social justice. And that's how I plan to use this at my school.